Yo, what's good, everybody? It's your boy Durag D, man. Thank you for joining me once again on Dudes in Love with Football, the DILF podcast, man. The place where every NFL fan can come for their fix. You saw the title. Let's not waste any time, man. Like, comment, subscribe, follow, turn on those notifications. And if your favorite player, or if a player that you know, or a player that's on your team is on this list, man, you got you a golden gem, man. And send this to a friend. Everybody knows somebody that loves the game, man. Send this to your buddy. Now let's get right into it with number one. I want you guys to take one guess at who led the NFL in yards per reception last year. I want you guys to take one guess. Basically, who's the best deep threat in the entire NFL 2024 to 2025? I'll give you 5 seconds to guess who it was. Nah, it wasn't him, bro. It wasn't anybody you're thinking JJ. It wasn't Mike Evans. It wasn't Tyreek Hill. It wasn't Jamar, CeeDee Lamb. It was a little guy in Indianapolis that plays for the Colts, and his name is Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce, man. This dude is raw. If I would have asked you who was going to lead the team in receiving yards going into last season, everybody would have said Michael Pittman. Now, you would have had a couple freaks like me that truly believe that Josh Downs is the best receiver on this team. I would have picked Josh Downs. But little did I know that with the same garbage quarterbacks, no disrespect, that with the same garbage quarterback play, it was Alec Pierce going for over 800 yards on only 37 catches, leading the league at 22.3 yards per reception, leading the team in yards, man. It's absolutely astonishing, bro, because nobody would have thought that. And he's statistically the best deep threat in all of football. And that's why he has to be one of the most underrated players in the league, man, because he's doing this with guys that can't hit the broadside of a barn. He's only getting so many targets. He only had 37 catches. I mean, imagine if this guy got a real role where he was getting 120 targets, where he was potentially catching 80 passes. Like, with his speed and his ability to get behind the defense, man, this dude could honestly be special. And I don't think that the Colts are doing him justice with this quarterback play. I don't think the Colts are doing him justice with this roster either, because he needs more looks. And I'm not going to lie to you, I love me some Josh Downs, and they just drafted A.D. Mitchell, and then they also just drafted Tyler Warren. So they've added a lot of target competition, a lot of talent in this skill position room. But I think Alec Pierce is a guy that they have to, this year, have to get him more looks, because he could be absolutely deadly if they get him the ball more. Because, man, he's exactly what the doctor ordered. That's what's so funny. They need explosion. Because, I mean, I love Josh Downs, but he's not a down the field guy. He's more of a slot guy. He's more of a, mismatch. He's a dog, don't get me wrong, but he's not a deep threat. Michael Pittman, not a deep threat. I think he's mid, but not a deep threat. A.D. Mitchell, I don't know. He looked like a bust last year, to be honest with you. It was Alec Pierce, man. Shout out Alec Pierce. Number one on this is in no particular order, so I wouldn't say number one on the list, but he had to be the first guy I mentioned, because when I think underrated, man, Alec Pierce is the definition of underrated. He literally, and I do mean literally, never gets brought up in any type of best deep threat, best speed. No, he literally, most people don't even know who he is. And when I do hear people talk about him, they call him Alex. They don't even call him by his actual name, which is Alec with a C, not Alex. So, man, don't sleep on Alec Pierce, man. He's one of my biggest sleepers for fantasy. If you play fantasy, basketball, or anything like that, man, he any week, bro, he could go off for 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards, so on just 3 catches. So he's got to be a guy that you're looking for in all your fantasy leagues if you play fantasy. And he's a guy that, don't be surprised if he accidentally had 1,000 yards this year, man. Don't be surprised. Now, moving on into number 2, we got a running back that finished 8th in rushing yards last year in one of the worst offenses in the NFL, behind, honestly, a solid offensive line. And that's Chuba Hubbard, man. I loved Chuba Hubbard when he was at Oklahoma State. I really did. And then Now, he came out, he was a mid-round pick, and I thought he kind of got buried. I thought he was going to be a guy like LaMichael James, like De'Anthony Thomas, that like were great in college, but then hit the pros and just like fizzled out. You just stopped hearing their name. But then he got his opportunity last year without Christian McCaffrey, and he absolutely took advantage of it. And then going into this year with Bryce going into his second year, he needed to have this type of season. He needs to be a bell cow because one of the best friends of a young quarterback is a running game. So, I mean, I do believe Carolina is trying to build the right way. They got one of the most underrated backs in the league, 8th in the league in rushing yards. That's ahead of guys like Bucky Irving, who everybody tells me is the next coming of Barry Sanders. This guy just can't do anything wrong. And hey, don't get me wrong, I like Bucky just as much as the next guy, but I mean, they act like this guy like top 5 in the league or something like that. That was more than James Cook. James Cook had a nice year last year. And more than James Conner. James Conner, who's very consistent, a solid RB1 in this league. Chuba Hubbard outperformed all those guys when it comes to yards specifically. In one of the worst offenses. All those guys were in solid, at least, offenses. The Bucks were crazy. I mean, the Bills, do I even have to speak on that? And then you got the Cardinals, who were at least better than the Panthers. Panthers is one of the worst offenses in the league. And Chuba Hubbard, week in and week out, was still producing as one of the better running backs in the league. So he absolutely has to make this list. He's kind of a sleeper for fantasy. I believe in Chuba Hubbard next year, but they did bring in Rico Dowdle. They drafted Trevor Etienne late in the draft, so it seems like they may want to take a little off his plate because last year they literally had no one else to take carries because Miles Sanders was the definition of what are we doing? The definition of Mayday, the definition of Houston, we have a problem. He's the reason why running backs weren't getting money for a while. He was the reason. So, he just couldn't supplement any carries. He couldn't give him any rest. So they literally had to force feed Chuba. So I think these guys are more depth than anything. I don't think they're actually like going to take his role away, so to say. I do think Rico Dowdle is solid. I think he's a solid RB2. As an RB1, I don't want, like in real life, for my team, I wouldn't want him as an RB1. But as an RB2 depth, a guy that if my starter goes down, I don't mind Rico Dowdle coming in as a backup. And Trevor Etienne, now we know obviously he's the brother of Travis, who was one of the most talented ACC running backs we've ever seen, like legitimately. And then came out with a first-round pick, broke his foot, had the foot injury, missed his entire rookie season, then came out his second year, was solid, and then got a lot of volume after James Robinson left. And we saw him flash a lot and be pretty consistent. And then this past year, I have no idea what happened. There were reports that he was battling some injuries throughout the season and stuff like that, but he just really didn't look like himself. This is Trevor. This is his little brother. So we know he obviously has talent in his blood. So we'll see if Chuba Hubbard can still be that guy, and we'll see what kind of volume he's get, what kind of workload he gets, if he even gets the opportunity to duplicate a season. But I really believe that they should run through Chuba Hubbard first. They drafted Ted McMillan. This offense is looking like it could be better, and I believe that could benefit Chuba Hubbard immensely if they don't have defenses just stacking the box constantly because Bryce has no one to throw to on the perimeter and or he can't make throws on the outside. I think with Ted McMillan bringing it, they've tried. Like even though Carolina hasn't hit on receivers, you got to at least give them credit for trying. They tried with Jonathan Mingo. They brought in Adam Thielen. They drafted Xavier Legette, and now they've gotten Ted McMillan. That's 4 wide receivers that are at least supposed to be wide receiver 2 or better worthy. Maybe not Thielen at this point. But Jonathan Mingo, Xavier Legette, and Ted McMillan, bare minimum, should be wide receiver 2 or better in this league. So they've tried. These guys need to step up and do their job and help out Bryce Young. And I think that can happen this year. And if that happens, Chuba Hubbard will be the beneficiary. And you heard it here first. Now, moving on into guy number 3. We got a guy that quietly went for 1,000 yards last year in one of the worst offenses when he had Cockapoo for quarterback. He's one of the most underrated receivers. He's playing with Cockapoo in his last team. Now he's playing with Cockapoo now. Now he got an upgrade from Cockapoo, but it's mid now, and that's Jacoby Myers. I love me some Jacoby Myers, man. He never complains. He goes out there, he does his job, and he's, like I say, he's been playing with Cockapoo for quarterback. I mean, last year, we're talking about Aiden O'Connell. We're talking about Gardner Minshew. Now, Gardner Minshew was rookie year in Jacksonville, the little Minshew mania that was going on. Cool. He had his little Taylor Heineke vibe, his little DeVito vibes, but that is over, man. We're trying to win games, and we need somebody who can get our receivers the football. And you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. And neither was Aiden O'Connell. But now they got a real adult in the room at quarterback, a veteran, a guy who can get his number one the ball. We saw him force feed JSN when he was the only receiver that they had. We saw him, even feed DK Metcalf at times. So we definitely will see probably a better year from Jacoby Myers. Now, obviously, they drafted Jack Bech in the second round. Brock Bowers is an absolute man-child, and he's going to get a ton of targets because he might be their best offensive weapon if Genty, is number two. Unless Genty is the second coming of Barry Sanders, and he outdoes Bowers, that would just be absolutely insane. But, we'll see on that. But, I don't sleep on Jacoby Myers. Now, I'm not saying he's some crazy wide receiver one or anything. All I'm saying is, last year he had more receiving yards than DJ Moore in 7 games. And DJ Moore had Caleb Williams, and he had more opportunities to get production than Jacoby Myers did because, like I said, he's playing with Cockapoo. So, and then we get to, more yards than Tyreek Hill. Now, I do understand Tua missed some games, and he also had Cockapoo for quarterback for a few weeks, and he had a wrist injury and whoop-de-woo, but this is still Tyreek Hill. Jacoby Myers ain't no Tyreek Hill now. He ain't no Tyreek Hill. I ain't never said that. But, he outproduced him. He flat out outproduced him last year. And they both had Cockapoo at times. Now, Tua is obviously much, much better than Cockapoo. Say what you want about Tua, but he ain't Aiden O'Connell, and he ain't Gardner Minshew. But, he could support wide receivers. Jalen Waddle had a crazy year with him, as well as Tyreek Hill's had multiple. So, I don't want to hear any excuses for why Tyreek Hill can't even outproduce Jacoby Myers when it's equal playing field at the bare minimum. And then all I heard last year was, oh, Marvin Harrison is the next coming of Jesus Christ. Like, I thought this dude was going to come in and legitimately break every rookie record there ever was. There were guys telling me that a rookie Marvin Harrison was better today than Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I said, you're crazy. I said, I don't know what drug you're on, but you need to stop it. Stop with the Marvin Harrison talk. I'm done with it. I was telling everybody last year, I'm taking Neighbors. I think Neighbors is flat out a better player. I was called a biased LSU fan, and maybe I was. And maybe in the long run, I'll still be wrong because it's only been 1 year. And who's to say that in 2 years after this year that Marvin isn't better? But all I heard was Marvin this, Marvin that. And guess who outproduced him? Damn near Alec Pierce. Damn near Alec Pierce. I don't even got to say Jacoby Myers. Damn near Alec Pierce, brother. Damn near Alec Pierce. So, Jacoby goes without saying, Jacoby Myers outproduced Marvin Harrison. And guess who else? Jacoby Myers outproduced T. Higgins. And I love me some T. Higgins, don't get me wrong. But T. Higgins can't stay on the field. T. Higgins is a wide receiver 2 on his team. He's an elite wide receiver 2 in this league, obviously, one of the best, if not the best. And then I don't want to hear Cockapoo quarterback for him, obviously. He's got top 4 quarterback in the league. So, but Jacoby Myers outproduced him. Jacoby Myers is more consistent. Jacoby Myers doesn't miss as many games as T. Higgins. It's just it's just as simple as that. So I'm not saying Jacoby Myers is better, but this is just the underrated players. He's 100% underrated because when people talk about T. Higgins, a guy like Jacoby Myers never gets brought up. And I don't think he's the talent, but the production speaks for itself, Talent only takes you so far. I need to see results, you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is at some point. Jacoby Myers got that dog in him. And so does T. Higgins, but I don't know. Maybe now that T. Higgins got a contract, he'll be on the field more, but Jacoby Myers more consistent. Outproduced him. Now moving in to our next underrated player, Aaron Jones, bro. Aaron Jones, I feel like people used to talk about him back when he had Aaron Rodgers and he was putting up double-digit touchdowns and he was putting up nice seasons back when he was with the Packers. But this is still that same Aaron Jones. Don't get it twisted. I want you to guess how many total yards Aaron Jones had last year. 1,500. 1,500 total yards, and I haven't heard cockapoo about it. Nobody has said anything about Aaron Jones having 1,500 total yards last year. And this guy was absolutely amazing. Now, maybe Vikings fans saw, but all I heard about the Vikings offense is Sam Darnold this, and rightfully so, Justin Jefferson that, and rightfully so, Jordan Addison this, and that's all I heard was and Kevin O'Connell that. But I don't hear nothing about no Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, while he may not have been the straw that was stirring the drink, he was a key contributor to why this offense was an absolute huge surprise, averaging 4.5 yards a carry. And he was really involved in the passing game, had over 400 yards receiving. So he was a nice safety blanket for Sam Darnold, a nice dump off option when Sam Darnold was in trouble if the play broke down. So, man, give Aaron Jones some credit, man. He may not be, prime Aaron Jones like he once was. He may be getting up there a little bit, taking a step back, but he had one of his healthier years. He had one of the best years of his career that I have not heard anybody say anything about. And maybe that just goes to show you how good the running back season was last year, because obviously Saquon Barkley went over 2,000 yards. He had a crazy year. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. Obviously, Derrick Henry almost had 2,000 yards himself, had one of the best years of his career, almost averaged 6 yards a carry, which is absolutely insanity for a guy over 30. And the Ravens had one of the best rushing offenses that we've ever seen. And then, we get even Josh Jacobs was super nice for the Packers. He had over 1,300 yards rushing. Then we had Jahmyr Gibbs when absolutely nuclear, had like 20 touchdowns. And even with Monty, had like 1,700 total yards. It was doing absolutely bonkers, averaging dummy yards per carry, yards per touch. One of the most efficient players, one of the most explosive players in the league. Then you got Bijan Robinson. Let's not forget about this guy. He could go for 1,000 if he really wanted to, because he can catch with the best. I mean, the running back landscape right now is just absolutely bonkers. And no, we can't even get to Aaron Jones because we haven't even talked about Bucky Irving, who was a 5th-round pick and came in and led the Buccaneers in rushing when they went from 1,300 to 2,600 rushing yards. It's just absolutely nutty, man. And man, it's just wild. But, we're not talking about Kyren Williams, who just almost leads running backs in snap share every year. He's like 80-something% every year. He never comes off the field. It is just absolutely wild, the talent that we have at running back. And the fact that we're not even talking about Aaron Jones. We're not even talking about Aaron Jones because, Alvin Kamara is always going for 50-plus catches, 80 catches, something crazy, and breaking off tackles left and right. Now, the Saints are going to go 0-17 this year, so that's not happening. But he's still an explosive player. CMC, obviously, is CMC when he's healthy. He wasn't healthy last year, so there's nothing to talk about. But we need to keep talking about Aaron Jones, man. Don't sleep on Aaron Jones. A healthy Aaron Jones is still one of the most explosive players in the league, and he is a running back that, maybe he's not a Saquon, a Bijan, a Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's more than capable of going for 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then sealing the game away late. So, we need to give Aaron Jones his flowers while he's, he may not be that upper echelon, but he's still a guy that deserves our respect. And 1,500 yards from scrimmage is absolutely no joke. Now, the next guy, he might be the most non-underrated of this list, and that's Bo Nix. But I don't think people give Bo Nix enough credit for what he did. Now, me as a Jaden fan, I'll be the first to tell you, I think Jaden Daniels deserved Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was absolutely spectacular. The match will change my life. I'm a changed man. But Bo Nix, the stuff he was doing, the numbers he put up were absolutely crazy. When I think about the fact that he came out of college, right, and he didn't throw a touchdown in his first game, he didn't throw a touchdown in his second game, he didn't even throw a touchdown in his third game. And this man still ended up second all time in passing touchdowns for a rookie. Behind only Justin Herbert, who threw 31, is Bo Nix at 29. And guess what? I don't think the Bears have ever had a 30-touchdown passer in the history of the franchise. And Bo Nix is almost doing that as a rookie. So I'm a little sad Bears fan, but it's crazy what he was doing. And this is with Cortland Sutton, and I don't want to say cockapoo at receiver, but I mean it just is what it is, man. He was putting up numbers that he really shouldn't have. And I know Sean Payton is a great coach and all that, but I mean, Bo Nix was 6th in the entire league in passing touchdowns. That's absolutely nutty. And I know people are saying, there are people on the hype train, people singing his praises. There are some that legitimately believe he deserved Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now, I would go that far. If you're saying that, then no, I don't think he's underrated. But when I think about guys that can take that next step, now I think everyone, it's obvious that there's a top 4 quarterback in the league, unanimous, whatever order you want to put him in, whether it's Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar. Those are top 4. Now that 5th spot is up for grabs. Some people say Stafford, some people say Jalen Hurts, some people say Herbert, some people say Stroud, Jaden, this one and that one. Bo Nix is a guy that if he takes his team to the AFC Championship game, if he wins the division and wins a playoff game and knocks off the Chiefs or something like that, bro, like we're gonna have a conversation. Why is he not top 10? Why is he not top 8? Why is he not top 5? You know what I mean? And I know it takes multiple years to get to that upper echelon, but Bo Nix is a guy who's getting off he's getting off to a great start and no one's talking about it. You know what I mean? It's just like when Justin Herbert did what Justin Herbert did, he's top 5. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks we've seen. This and that. Bo Nix does it. It's like, yeah, well, you know, that's what I'm getting from the football community. At least maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are more on his bandwagon than I think, and I'm just not hearing it or I'm not being exposed to. I have no idea because I'm not big on social media either. But man, like I just feel like Bo Nix, he's and not only was he good in real life, he was good in fantasy too. Like man, he's just. I think if he takes a step, man, the AFC West might be in trouble. It might be one of the most stacked quarterback divisions in the league with Mahomes, Herbert, and Bo Nix, man. And with the Raiders, Geno is all right, but if they ever get a young quarterback, that could be the most stacked quarterback division in the league, bar none. So, Bo Nix, he could be a top 5 quarterback in 2 years, no doubt about it. He's got the talent. You know, he's got a ton of college experience before he came in the league, so he's seen defenses. He knows how to read defense. He knows how to prepare, all that good stuff. He came in mature. You know, he wasn't a kid or anything. He wasn't shell shocked. Well, maybe he was because he didn't throw a touchdown for 4 games. But, you know, I just don't see why Bo Nix can't be top 5 in 2 years. I really don't. Especially, like I said, he's doing this without elite weapons around him. If they mess around and they get somebody in free agency, like if they got a T. Higgins or if they got a Chris Godwin or this one or that one or Stephon Diggs or literally anybody to help him out that's better than Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, who they both show flashes, no disrespect. But if he had a more consistent guy, those two are explosive. But you know, a more consistent guy, a guy that wins more on the routes, creates separation. Because even Courtland Sutton's solid, but he's not a separation creator. He's more of a contested catch point guy, and you know, a red zone threat and a big body type guy. But you know, he's pretty consistent, pretty reliable. But I just think they need more explosiveness and more threats on the perimeter. And Bo Nix can really, really thrive and look like a top 6, 7 quarterback, no doubt about it. Now, you know, I got to sneak one of my Commanders on here, man. I got to talk about Mikey Sainristil, Frozone, rookie corner out of Michigan, man. He had a great season for us. We had high expectations, honestly. A lot of people were calling him the best pound-for-pound corner in the draft, one of the best players in the draft. I know guys like Joel Klatt and other analysts really liked him. I didn't know much about him until we drafted him. Then I started watching the film, and I was like, bro, I don't know like why he wasn't first-round pick. This guy's got that dog in him, and hey, when you're at corner, you need that dog. Or at least I like guys that have that dog in them, especially defensively. So after watching this film, my expectations started to go up and up and up. And when I watched the games, he just, you know, at the beginning of the year, I'm not gonna lie, like it was bad. It was bad at the beginning of the year, but I don't think it was all his fault. It was some of the defensive schemes. They're playing him in man. Like I remember watching the Bengals game, they had him manned up against Jamar Chase 1-on-1 against Burt for a touchdown. Like, what do you expect the guys in his 3rd game going against Jamar Chase to just win a triple crown? Like, I don't expect him to lock down Jamar Chase. Okay, and then you know, Benjamin St. Juste wasn't helping whatsoever. He was getting cooked left and right. And then even throughout the season, you know, Noah Igbenogany was solid. But with Benjamin St. Juste getting cooked so much and us having no corner depth, he was forced to play on the outside. When he's more of a slot guy, he's an elite slot corner. But then when you put him on the outside, he's good, but he's not as good as he is in the slot. So he had to play the outside. They put Noah Igbenogany in the slot. But this year, he's going to be playing more in the slot. Now, his rookie year still, this man had 14 pass deflection. 14 as a rookie. That was top 10. And that's nutty for a rookie. Now, I will also say he had 93 tackles, which kind of scares me because as a corner, you really shouldn't be getting that many tackles. That means they're completing passes around you. But it also tells me that he's not afraid to stick his nose in there. And a lot of those are in the run game as well. He's not afraid to stick his nose in the run game, even though he's not the biggest guy. And being in the slot, he's closer to the ball. So he will help out in the run game. I don't know if all those 93 tackles are, on receivers that have caught passes on him or anything like that. But, he's got elite corner written all over him. He's got elite slot written all over him. And he this is when I knew he was gonna be elite. We were playing the Ravens and, he had some tip ball interception. I was like, good instincts, that's fine. But the first game when we played the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly, he had a route on Devonta Smith where Devonta Smith had him lined up in the slot, and I think he ran like some type of double move from the slot. It was like a stop and go. And Mikey Sainristil didn't bite whatsoever on the fake. And when the ball was thrown, perfect coverage, just tips it right out of his hand in the end zone, PBU, no flag, he didn't even have to touch Devonta Smith. It was just beautiful. I was like, hold up, let me find out. Hold up. And then later in the game, he did the same thing on Devonta Smith again. I was like, okay, now you really got my attention. And then he just got better and better and better throughout the season, to the point that in that Lions game in the playoffs, he had 2 interceptions. He was all over the place. Where he went from a guy that was getting burnt toast by Jamar Chase, to be fair, to picking off Jared Goff in the end zone in the playoffs and taking points off the board, picking off a trick play, which was disrespectful to throw in the first place. Having a running back throw to your receiver on a trick play on a corner is crazy. But it is what it is. He had the instincts. He was there. And it was so great to just see his maturation over the season and see him get better and better and better each week. And it was a blessing. It really, really was. So I just know he's going to be excellent in this league. So when you hear the name Mikey Sainristil, don't be surprised when people are talking about he might be one of the best slot corners, one of the most versatile corners in the league, because he's still good outside. He's not just a slot corner. Now, moving into the next guy, this is a guy I wanted Washington to draft in the first round when he was coming out, but he went in the second round. It came out he had, I think it was heart problems or some type of scary injury, something like that. And he was like a Swiss Army knife type. And that's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, JOK, of the Cleveland Browns. Now, he's like he can do multiple things. That's what I like about him. And he's not a guy that I can just, give you stats on. He led the league in this. He was top 10 in that. Because he's used all over the place, to the point he doesn't accumulate a lot of stats in any one specific area. He might have 3.5 sacks. He might have, 5 pass breakups. He might have 1 interception, 1 forced fumble. But that's because he goes from rushing the passer to playing the run to being in pass coverage, playing zone, playing man-to-man, QB spying. He does a lot. And the guy that he reminds me of that I thought was going to be elite is Isaiah Simmons. Like, remember Isaiah Simmons coming out of Clemson? Who he could do literally everything. Like, he played corner, he played safety, he played nickel, he played linebacker, he rushed the passer. I mean, he did everything. And when he was taken top 10, I thought he was going to be a game changer. But for whatever reason, I don't know if they couldn't find a position for him. Sometimes they say jack of all trades, master of none. When you're good at a lot, you're never great at anything. But JOK he's like an Isaiah Simmons light to me. Like, he's what Isaiah Simmons should have been in a way. But he can do a lot of things, man. That's what I really appreciate about him. And that's what I liked about him coming out of Notre Dame. Super versatile, got that dog in him, super twitchy athlete, super fast, quick, explosive, like instincts out the wazoo, football IQ. Like I said, like, he's not a guy I could just wow you with a bunch of stats. You're just going to have to turn on the film and watch the guy. And you're going to realize that he's a huge reason why the Browns defense is as good as the Browns defense is. Now, another guy that's a reason why the Browns defense is as good as the Browns defense is, or I guess has been, is Denzel Ward. And I don't think he gets enough credit either. Denzel Ward has been another guy who suffered from cockapoo at quarterback. Now, he's not a receiver, but it doesn't help anybody when your quarterback is cockapoo. And Denzel Ward has been one of the most consistent corners in the league ever since he came out of Ohio State. And this past year, he actually led the league in pass deflections with 19. 19 pass deflections. That's one every game, bro. Like, they're trying them, and they're just not successful. Now, he's not a guy that flourishes a lot of turnovers. I guess career high interception mark is only 3. And, he's not a tackle machine or anything, but that's because he's a straight lockdown corner, just pure man to man. I got him. I'm looking at him. I'm not worried about the left. I'm not worried about the right. I'm looking straight at this guy, and I'm looking at my assignment. That's the type of guy he is. And he can just take people out of quarters. He can take people out of halves. He can take people out of games, man. I've seen it. And he's absolutely been a corner that has not gotten his respect because guys honestly, corners so deep nowadays. Sauce Gardner had his run as the best. Now it's unanimously, Pat Surtain, Trevon Diggs had his little run. It was Gilly for a fat minute. And then, Jalen Johnson had his cup of tea as maybe the best for a little bit. But, now, some say Derek Stingley's top, Christian Gonzalez gets a lot of love. Jair Alexander used to be up there. Marlon Humphrey's a guy that I also think is underrated. But Denzel Ward's name really doesn't get brought up in those talks. And honestly, I don't know why, because not only did he have 19 pass breakups this year, he's had another year where he had 18. He had another year where he had 15. And every year for his career, he's had at least 10 pass breakups. So I don't understand why when people talk about the top corners in the league and we get to number 5 and Denzel Ward's name hasn't been mentioned, I'm like, hey, like, does this person know ball or do they know ball? Because he's been one of the most consistent, one of the best corners in the league ever since he's got in the league. And he a guy that just consistently gets overlooked when talked about the position. And especially, like, I think of impact when I think of Denzel Ward because they've been consistently one of the best defenses in the league. Now, obviously, he's not the only player. They've got other players in the secondary. Martin Emerson saw they had Grant Delpit. They have other players in the secondary that are also good players. But, he is the straw that stirs the drink in that secondary. And obviously, it helps when you got guys like Myles Garrett, rush the passer, getting the ball out quick and stuff like that. So, and you got guys blitzing JOK. Obviously, they are a well-rounded group. And they are a well-oiled machine as defense. And then they had Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator who's, he may not be a great head coach, but, man, he can call defense. We know that for sure. So Denzel Ward's a guy, man, if you're listing off your top 5 corners, he's got to be in there. And I know the position is deep, but he's still great, man. He's still top 5, no doubt about it. Just led the league, like I said, pass defense, never had less than 10 PBUs in the season. And he's just a guy that needs more respect. And I know the Browns are trash, and we make fun of the Browns all the time, but their defense is not to be made fun of. Now, moving on to another guy on defense that I literally don't hear anybody bring up when we talk about the best of their position. We talk about linebackers. Everyone talks about, and rightfully so, no disrespect. Obviously, Fred Warner's the best in the game. Then, Bobby Wagner's up there. People bring up other guys, Bobby Okereke, people like Foyesade Oluokun was brought up, at points. But Robert Spillane, man, he's a dog, bro. He is an absolute dog. And I know he was playing for the Raiders, and the Raiders weren't very good on defense, and the Raiders, nobody wants to watch the Raiders, no one cares, they suck, blah, 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 whoop-de-whoop, whatever. But Robert Spillane was 3rd in tackles last year, and he's another guy. Now, the year before, he was also top 10, so that's 2 consecutive years of top 10 in tackle. He's also a guy that, he had 7 PBUs this past year, so he's good in coverage. He's not just a tackling machine. He's not just a blitz guy. He's not just a guy that, can stop the run. He's more of a modern-day linebacker where he can play coverage as well. So he's very versatile. That's the thing I love about defenders. JOK is versatile. Robert Spillane versatile. He had I think 3.5 sacks this year, or maybe 2.5, something like that. He had sacks. He can get sacks. He can QB spy. He can get pass deflections. He can play zone. He can play a little man. Now, don't ask him to play too much man. Now, he is a linebacker, obviously, but Robert Spillane is a guy where people bring up the best linebackers. He's literally never mentioned. Like, I don't hear anyone ever bring up his name. But when we turn on that film, when we look at those numbers, and we see that production, he should be mentioned. After this year, people are talking about Zach Bond. and rightfully so. He had an All-Pro year with one of the best, if not the best, defense in the league with the Eagles. So I don't know why Robert Spillane can't get that type of love. Zach Bond was a special teams player before this year, and he goes to the Eagles and he has a great year. And I'm not taking that away from him, but Robert Spillane, he had a year third and tackles. He had 7 PBUs. I mean, the forced fumbles, the sacks. He's versatile. Like, we start giving respect where respect is due, man. Like, and I understand like the Raiders suck and nobody want to talk about the Raiders for real, but they got some dogs out there, man. Shout out to Max Crosby. Shout out to Robert Spillane. I think with Genty, with Bowers, they got some young talent, some young dogs out there. People are gonna start watching more, and even though Robert Spillane isn't in Vegas anymore, obviously he's with the Patriots now. That's a sneaky pickup. People haven't talked about that pickup enough either. That for a Mike Vrabel team, I'm telling you, if he has a Zach Bond type season this year, don't be surprised. If Robert Spillane is first team All Pro this year, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. I'm telling you right now. I'm not okay. I almost gave it the do-rag D stamp, but I'm the first guy talking about Robert Spillane. And that's why we made this podcast so I can keep myself accountable, like for these takes. Like I could look absolutely stupid with that take, but Robert Spillane, I mean, if he could do that on a Raiders defense that is on the field all the time because their defense sucks, I mean, what can he do with the Patriots defense that is actually well coordinated? Maybe has an offense that can be better than what the Raiders was last year. Keep them off the field a little bit. Not give them short fields so that the opposing offense scores from 30 yards. Maybe make them go 70 yards. Maybe you can actually punt the ball instead of turn it over, get a bunch of flags, whatever the case may be. And maybe you can even lead in games sometimes so that you're not one-dimensional defensively. And we know they're gonna run. We're down by 40, so it doesn't matter. No. So Robert Spillane, man, if he has a Zach Bond type season, you heard it here first, absolutely. Now moving into our last most underrated player, and there were a lot of guys that I considered, man. Like I said, the league is so talented. There's so many guys that deserve love, but this guy I feel like gets a lot of hate. And that's why I'm here to show him love. And that is Najee Harris. Yes, him, that Najee Harris, who now plays for the Chargers, was a Steelers running back for years. The reason Najee Harris is underrated is because, no, he may not be the fastest. He may not be the most elusive, the shiftiest, the most explosive. None of that. I'm not accusing him of any of that. So let's get that out the way before anything. I understand that he has his limitations when it comes to athleticism and explosiveness. But when it comes to reliability, when it comes to knowing what you're going to get on a week in and week out basis, literally, because not only has he had 1,000 yards every single season of his career, but this man has a possible 68 games played, and he has 68 games played. 68 up, 68 down. My man has not missed a game in his career. At the running back position, that is absolutely unheard of. CMC every other year plays 2 games. People get banged up all the time. Even Derrick Henry had that foot injury when he was in Tennessee, and he had to miss games. And he's superhuman. I'm sure, now it's kind of ironic because, Najee Harris just had this eye injury, but he's never missed a game, 1,000 yards every year. Now, yes, his receiving prowess has gone down. He doesn't get the targets that he once did when he was a rookie and a young player, but I don't think he needs to be involved in the passing game for the Chargers, because they got Amari Hampton. He can catch flat passes plenty good enough. There's no reason for them to even throw it to Najee. He's a backup running back. And, they don't throw the ball that much to begin with. So he can just be, a goal line, a short yardage back, just like they had last year. And he could legitimately be the Gus Edwards to Amari Hampton being a better J.K. Dobbins. So, Najee Harris, man, when I think of Najee, I think of dependability. I think of, just the fact he's never missed a game as a running back is absolutely crazy, man, because it feels like we're in an age of people finding any excuse not to play. And that's no disrespect to any players because only you know your body, but man, it just feels like people just find any excuse to not play. But he's a guy, there's guys out there that they won't play unless they're 100% healthy. I got to be 110% healthy or I refuse to play. And then there's guys that go out there and they 55%, 65%, and they say, "Hey, I can walk. I'm playing." And Najee Harris is somewhere in the middle because I don't think he's a if I can walk, I'm playing type of guy. But he'll go out there and put the team on his back and do what he's got to do to help the team win each and every week. No matter if he's questionable all week, banged up, sick, personal problem. Like people take off for personal problems, and I got absolutely no issue with that. But this guy won't miss a game for personal issues. He won't miss a game because of suspension, because of injury, because of whoop-de-woo, anything. Like, he's just incredibly dependable. And he kind of reminds me of, Mike Evans, especially these last few years. Mike Evans hasn't been, over the top crazy with his numbers or anything. He's kind of barely been scraping that 1,000-yard mark, but being consistent while he's doing it, still being dependable, even at his advanced age. And obviously, now she's getting older, Mike Evans, but like it's the dependability, it's the consistency that we all love, and knowing where you're going to get that. Najee Harris is going to come in, he's going to clock in with his lunch pail and his hard hat on every single week and give you everything he's got, coach. He's going to block, he's going to pass protect, he's going to hit the holes hard. He might not go get the 40-yard touchdowns like Jalen Warren and the other backs in the league, but are the other backs in the league 68 up and 68 down? Are the other backs in the league 4 for 4 on 1,000-yard season? I don't know. Najee's resume, his numbers are honestly pretty underrated as well. So, Najee Harris 100% is a guy that really needs to get his flowers while he's still relevant. I don't want him to turn into a Zeke and then guys like, oh man, Najee Harris when he was with the Steelers, man, he was actually pretty solid, and I wish I would have gave him it. No. Just do it now, man. Just go ahead and say, bro, Najee was not as bad as people make it out to be, not nearly as bad. So, man, there it is. The top underrated players in the NFL. That was tough, man. And I'm saying, man, there were so many other guys I could have thought of, but I'm just leaving it at those 100%, man. But with that being said, man, thanks for joining me once again on Dudes in Love with Football, the DILF podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Durag D. I'm out. Peace.